I knew something was off the moment I walked into Walmart that evening. It was one of those muggy summer nights, the kind where the air clings to your skin and everything feels heavy. I had a short list: milk, eggs, some snacks for the weekend. But as I pushed my cart through the aisles, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It started in the produce section. A tall man with a scruffy beard and a cap pulled low over his eyes seemed to shadow me. I moved to the dairy aisle, and there he was again, always a few steps behind me. "Excuse me," he said, his voice gruff. "Can I get your number?" I froze. I don't think so," I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. I turned and walked quickly toward the front of the store, but he followed, his footsteps echoing mine. "Come on, just give me your number," he insisted, his tone growing more insistent. My heart raced. I glanced around, hoping to see a store employee. That's when she appeared, a woman with a kind face and determined eyes. She stepped between us. "Leave her alone," she said firmly. The man glared at her, but then smirked. "This isn't over," he muttered, before stalking off. I thanked the woman, my voice shaky. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I think so," I replied, barely above a whisper. "Thank you." I hurried to the checkout, paid for my groceries, and ran to my car. I fumbled with my keys, my hands trembling. Then I heard footsteps, quick, heavy. I turned and saw him, the man from the store, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Panic surged through me. I yanked the car door open and jumped inside, locking it just as he reached for the handle. He pounded on the window, shouting something I couldn't hear. I dialed 911, my fingers shaking. "There's a man following me," I gasped. "I'm in the Walmart parking lot. Please, hurry." I kept my eyes on him as I spoke, praying he wouldn't find a way inside, as now he was attempting to break through the window glass. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 security guards running towards us. They tackled him to the ground, wrestling him away from my car. Relief washed over me in waves. I stayed in the car, tears streaming down my face as I watched them handcuff him and lead him away. One of the guards came over and tapped on my window. "Are you okay, ma'am?" I nodded, still unable to speak. He waited patiently while I composed myself. "Thank you," I finally managed to say. "We'll need you to come inside and make a statement," he said gently. I followed him back into the store, legs feeling like jelly. The woman who had intervened was there too, giving her statement. She saw me and gave a reassuring nod. As I recounted the events to the security team, the reality sank in that I had been followed, harassed, and nearly attacked. But thanks to a brave stranger and quick security response, I was safe. That night, I replayed the events over and over. The man's eyes, his persistence, the pounding on my car window. But more than that, I remembered the woman who stepped in and the guards who came to my rescue. The world can be terrifying, but sometimes you find unexpected allies. And that night in a Walmart parking lot, I found mine. I should have taken a different route. I always tell myself that whenever I leave Walmart late at night, but tonight it seemed more important than ever. The fluorescent lights in the parking lot cast long, eerie shadows as I approached my car. The chill in the air wasn't just from the night breeze. Something felt off. As I loaded the last bag into the trunk, a man in a gray hoodie approached me. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice smooth, but with an edge I couldn't quite place. "Do you know how to get to Maple Avenue?" I forced a polite smile. "Sure, it's a bit complicated though. You might want to use a GPS." His eyes flickered with something, annoyance maybe, before he nodded and thanked me. I watched as he walked away, glancing back a couple of times. My unease grew, but I shook it off and got into my car. As I drove out of the parking lot, I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. It was probably nothing, I told myself. Lots of people leave Walmart at this hour. But when I turned onto my street 10 minutes later, the headlights were still there. I felt a jolt of fear. My mind raced. Could he be following me? I took a deep breath and kept driving past my house, trying to act normal. The car behind me followed. My pulse quickened. I needed to think fast. The police station was a few blocks away. If I could just get there, I'd be safe. I turned left, heading towards the station. The car followed. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I pulled into the parking lot of the police station, parking as close to the entrance as I could. I turned off the engine and looked in the rearview mirror. The car hesitated at the entrance before speeding off. Relief washed over me, but my hands were still shaking as I got out of the car. I hurried inside, explaining everything to the officer at the desk. He listened intently, taking notes, his expression serious. "You're smart to come here," he said. "We've had a few reports of suspicious activity around the area." The officer's words echoed in my mind as I drove home, escorted by a patrol car. The feeling of being watched lingered, and I couldn't shake the image of the man in the gray hoodie. His eyes, cold and calculating, haunted me. I double-checked my locks that night, every creak and groan of the house setting me on edge. Sleep was elusive, and when I did drift off, nightmares of being followed jolted me awake. The next morning, I was exhausted but determined to be more vigilant. Days turned into weeks, and the incident started to fade, though I never fully let my guard down. Then, one evening, as I was sorting through the mail, I found a plain white envelope with no return address. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message scrawled in messy handwriting. "Found you." I stared at the note, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The police were immediately called, and they took the note as evidence. The officer reassured me they would do everything they could, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. Everywhere I went, I looked over my shoulder. Every unfamiliar car parked on my street sent a wave of fear through me. I became a prisoner in my own home, my life overshadowed by the constant threat. Months later, a man was arrested a few towns over, matching the description of the guy who had followed me. He was linked to several other stalking cases. The relief I felt was immense, but the scars of that night remained. I still take precautions, I still watch my surroundings, and every time I leave Walmart late at night, I make sure to take a different route home. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a stark, sterile glow over the nearly deserted supermarket aisles. It was well past midnight, and I had decided to do some late-night grocery shopping to avoid the crowds. The cart's wheels squeaked softly, and I felt an odd sense of calm as I pushed it down the empty aisles, my mind wandering. I was in the cereal aisle, debating between Cheerios and my guilty pleasure, Cocoa Puffs, when I sensed it. A tingle at the back of my neck, the feeling of eyes on me. I brushed it off. Late-night shopping had a way of making everything feel a bit off. Still, as I reached for the box, I glanced up and saw him. A man, standing at the end of the aisle, half hidden behind a display of canned soups, staring. A shiver ran down my spine, but I dismissed it. Maybe he was just zoning out or waiting for someone. I pushed my cart to the next aisle, telling myself I was being silly. But it happened again in the dairy section. As I compared Greek yogurt to regular, I saw him out of the corner of my eye, his gaze fixed on me, unblinking. My pulse quickened. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was lost in thought. But his presence felt invasive, threatening. I moved on, trying to ignore him, but the sensation of being watched only grew stronger. I turned into the frozen foods section, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. My breath came in short bursts, visible in the frigid air. I grabbed a bag of peas, my fingers trembling. He was there again, closer this time. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly, casting his shadow longer, more menacing. Panic was setting in. Should I confront him? Call for help? My phone was in my hand before I realized it, but as I glanced up, he was gone. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. I saw him again, nearer, his expression unreadable. Abandoning my cart, I walked briskly toward the front of the store, my heart hammering in my chest. I passed the snack aisle, my steps quickening. I could hear his footsteps echoing mine, a constant reminder that he was right behind me. In the cleaning supplies section, I reached a dead end. Panic surged through me, my hands shaking as I looked for an escape. Suddenly, the overhead speakers crackled to life, announcing a special on produce. The sudden noise made me jump, my heart pounding even harder. I turned, and there he was, blocking my only exit, just a few feet away. His eyes bore into mine, and I felt trapped. My voice caught in my throat. "Can I help you with something?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. He didn't answer, just kept staring, a predatory look in his eyes. I took a step back, bumping into a shelf. Cleaning supplies clattered to the floor, the noise echoing in the silent aisle. The commotion drew the attention of a couple of late-night stock clerks further down. He took another step closer, and I felt a scream rising in my throat. But before it could escape, one of the clerks called out, "Hey, what's going on here?" The man hesitated, his eyes darting between me and the approaching clerks. In that split second of distraction, I bolted past him, running towards the front of the store. My feet pounded against the linoleum, my breath ragged. The clerks shouted, their voices a mix of concern and confusion. I burst into the brightly lit checkout area, where a few other night owls were paying for their groceries. The sight of other people, the normalcy, brought tears to my eyes. I turned to see the man now confronted by store security. They grabbed his arms, their grip firm, leading him towards the exit. "Are you okay?" a cashier asked, her face etched with worry. I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. "I think so." The security team escorted the man out, his eyes still fixed on me, but now with something else. Defeat, perhaps. As the doors slid shut behind him, the tension slowly seeped out of my body. I stood there, shaking, surrounded by the ordinary chaos of a late-night grocery store, feeling anything but ordinary. I finished my shopping quickly, my nerves still on edge. As I walked to my car, I glanced around, half expecting to see him again. But the parking lot was empty, the night still and silent. I drove home, every shadow along the road making my heart race. As I pulled into my driveway, the events of the night replayed in my mind. The safety of my home felt like a fragile barrier against the world outside. I knew I wouldn't be shopping alone at night again anytime soon.